Hello, welcome to Storytime with QMax. Today I would like to share a poem with you. And in order to share the poem, I'd like to provide you with a little bit of background into Iranian culture and my family's culture in the 1960s. I think an important thing to understand was that in our family, nap time was a big deal, as it was in many parts of the city, simply because it got so hot in the afternoons that everything pretty much shut down. And as a young boy of, maybe 5, 6, 7, this is sort of how I remember things. The poem is titled Summer Afternoons Remembered. And what I'm going to do is, as I go through each stanza, which consists of 4 lines, I'll read it to you, provide a brief explanation, and then read you the first and the 4th line of the poem. And then, if this is too much for you, just go ahead and fast forward, because at the end I will have the poem all by itself. It was a time of day when the voice of traffic, incessant honking, mopeds and taxis was nowhere to be found. Like I said, it's as if the city also went down for a nap. The noisy mopeds with the exhaust leaking, was gone. The taxis and the horn blowing and all of that was just quieted down. The voice of traffic, incessant honking, mopeds and taxis was nowhere to be found. The voice of traffic was nowhere to be found. Next stanza. Sabzi merchants, layers of newspaper, covered greens dampened by water, closed doors for the afternoon. Sabzi merchants are greengrocers. And the thing to remember was, this is a place and a time where you did not have, the greengrocer did not have any type of air conditioning unit or refrigeration. And so he counted on a ceiling fan, and what they used to do was they would just simply, there was this table full of greens, fresh greens that had just arrived that day, and it had everything on there. Things that like gashnis, chambourele, spinach, and I'm mixing Farsi words as well as English words. And so depending on what mom was cooking, we would go and get those particular ingredients. And they were all fresh, like I said. And it's this 8-foot table, and it may be about stacked that high with greens. And he would just kind of sift through it and pull out whatever it was that mom needed for some of her dishes, like olme sabzi. And the way to keep things fresh and cool in the afternoon was, before he went down for his nap, was he would just lay sheets of newspaper on top of everything and then sprinkle water on top so to keep it kind of cool and moist, and then lightly close the door. And there was a second thing, there was a window in this shop. So there was a window here and a door here, and the window was a foldable type that would open. And so that would still be open for air circulation. But the fact that the door was shut, we knew he was not there and to leave the place alone and come back later. So he also would go home in the afternoon and take his nap. So once again, sabzi merchants, layers of newspaper, covered greens dampened by water, closed doors for the afternoon. 1st and 4th lines of this stanza, sabzi merchants closed doors for the afternoon. Next stanza. Air conditioning units consisting of water flowing over straw mats were no longer in use. The type of air conditioning system we had, and in this part of town, was the old big metal box with a pump on the bottom and a water reservoir that would then pump the water up to the top and let it fall over these mats, straw mats. And there was a fan there, so as the water came down over the straw mats, the fan would blow the water into the room or the house, and it was actually quite effective. And my dad used to shut that down in the afternoons when we took our nap. So once again, air conditioning units consisting of water flowing over straw mats were no longer in use. First and fourth lines of this stanza, air conditioning units were no longer in use. Next stanza, twine feeding pulleys used to keep roller blinds made of willow branches were released from their hold. We did not have screen doors or screens over windows. What we had were mats. And what you did was open the door, drop the mat down, and the mat just hung over the door. And so there was also sometimes a pulley mechanism that you would use to kind of lift it up and drop it down, sort of just like you have today. So first and fourth lines, actually I'll read it again, and then first and fourth lines. Twine feeding pulleys used to keep roller blinds made of willow branches were released from their hold. Twine feeding pulleys were released from their hold. Next stanza. Hung across open doorways, gently swaying to the rhythm of the desert breeze, Mother Nature set the pulse. Imagine, if you will, that there's a breeze blowing either from the mountains or maybe a combination of the desert and the mountains, and it comes through the city, and the mats are hanging there, and as it blows, the mats kind of lift up, and then suddenly it stops, and the mats slam against the metal frame, making a tuck sound. So once again, it would blow up, and then it would stop, tuck. And I remember going to sleep to that type of a sound. It was almost like, how would I describe it? A hypnotic state where you're kind of falling asleep and you hear that tuck, tuck. Mother Nature is setting the pulse. So I'll read it again. Hung across open doorways, gently swaying to the rhythm of the desert breeze, Mother Nature set the pulse. First and fourth lines, hung across open doorways, Mother Nature set the pulse. Next stanza. Flies and mosquitoes gain entry in search of shade, find soulmates, engage in the ritual dance of life. As this mat is doing its tucking, flies are sneaking in because they're looking for shade. They also want to get out of the hot sun. And if you've ever seen in shaded areas around your home in the summer, like even under a carport, for example, flies start to accumulate there, and they start to do this dance thing where they go zigzag, and there's several of them. I call that the dance of life. The thing that's interesting here is in the afternoon, during afternoon nap, everything was quiet. So I would watch them. But if this was any other time of day, we had flycatchers in the home. So brother and I were usually rewarded with an ice cream if we caught X number of flies with the fly swatter, basically killed, not caught. So, because you wanted to keep the flies out of the home so it would not get into the food and all that type of stuff and lay their eggs. So I'm going to read this once again. Flies and mosquitoes gain entry in search of shade, find soulmates, engage in the ritual dance of life. First and fourth lines of this stanza. Flies and mosquitoes engage in the ritual dance of life. Next stanza. Destiny, with the voice of a whisper, made its way in search of an owner. This is just part of my philosophy, that when your mind is finally quiet, this is afternoon nap time, quiet enough, destiny or the universe has a way of coming and talking to you and speaking to you. And it tells you what your destiny is. Sometimes you dream about these things. But during the daytime, when you're busy doing things and your mind is active, that destiny cannot be heard by most. So, the stanza again, I'll read it, and then the first and fourth lines. Destiny, with the voice of a whisper, made its way in search of an owner. Destiny in search of an owner. Next stanza. The universe, unburdened by people, materialized and departed. As I lay my head down, manifests itself before me. This is another one of my philosophies, that people are the encumbered nature's ability to do what it needs to do. It's like we are an impediment with our sprays, our bodies, our minds. We go after them with fly swatters and we spray the house if there's too many insects in there. But this is the universe, this is nature, they're all part of it. And what is it like when we are not in the way and nature and the universe can just be itself? So I'm going to read this again, and then the first and the fourth. A universe unburdened by people, materialized and departed, as I lay my head down, manifests itself before me. A universe unburdened by people manifests itself before me. So that's when I get to see it. Anyway, my name is Kayojijina. This is my poem titled Summer Afternoons Remembered, and I hope you enjoy it. Summer Afternoons Remembered. It was a time of day when the voice of traffic, incessant honking, mopeds and taxis was nowhere to be found. Sabzi merchants, layers of newspaper, covered greens dampened by water, closed doors for the afternoon. Air conditioning units, consisting of water flowing over straw mats, were no longer in use. Twine feeding pulleys, used to keep roller blinds made of willow branches, were released from their hold. Hung across open doorway, gently swaying to the rhythm of the desert breeze, Mother Nature set the pulse. Flies and mosquitoes gain entry in search of shade, find soulmates, engage in the ritual dance of life. Destiny, with the voice of a whisper, made its way in search of an owner. A universe unburdened by people materialized and departed as I lay my head down, manifests itself before me.